This was a brutal attack on Katrina Smith.
A vicious murder.
The individual who attacked her was going to make sure that she did not survive.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
She felt that she was being followed or stalked by somebody.
Katrina knew that her life was in danger.
Peeping Toms are actually a very high-risk category of voyeur, so that is an immediate red flag.
The truth will be revealed.
How did he know about blood in the trunk? This is bigger than just one piece. This is a whole huge corner of that puzzle.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Machesney Park, Illinois, a quiet enclave 2 hours from Chicago.
Machesney Park is kind of like a bedroom community. It's a smaller community. It's more quaint.
It's very close-knit. You can leave your doors open, and there's not a lot of crime.
You have your vehicle burglaries, you have, your home burglaries that happen, crimes of opportunity, crimes of violence in Machesney Park. That doesn't happen every day. That's not Chicago. It's more relaxed. It's a safer city.
But on the afternoon of October 23rd, that peaceful tranquility is brutally shattered.
Sheriff's Communications, can I help you?
My wife, I'm concerned because I haven't been able to reach her.
Okay.
We had a frantic, distraught, worried husband, Todd Smith. He reports that his wife has disappeared.
You haven't been able to reach your wife?
Right.
What's your wife's name?
Katrina?
He had seen her the night before. And now all of a sudden, he's very concerned because she hasn't contacted him. She hasn't answered the phone, and he doesn't know what's happened to her.
The missing woman is 30-year-old Katrina Smith.
From the information we gathered about Katrina, she's a super friendly woman who would do anything for anybody.
Katrina works in human resources at a local automotive plant.
She was at work every day at 8 o'clock at Cameron Industries. Excellent employee, always had a smile on her face, always cheery. She attended church in Rockford quite regularly. She was very devoted to her family.
Tasked with investigating the disappearance of Katrina Smith are veteran detective Vince Lindbergh and Criminal Bureau Chief Prosecutor Marilyn Height Ross.
The State's Attorney's Office is involved very early on any crime investigation that appears to be suspicious. So once Katrina Smith was reported missing, we were involved immediately.
Investigators meet with Katrina's husband, Todd Smith, to gain more information about her disappearance.
The night before, which would have been October 22nd, Katrina had confirmed a job interview for the morning of October 23rd at 7:30, and then she was to report to work after that.
Before 7 a.m., Todd had texted Katrina, wishing her well on her job interview. You'll do well, knock it out of the park.
But she never appeared for the job interview, and she did not report for work on October 23rd.
He had attempted to call her, attempted to contact her. She had vanished, she had disappeared.
Investigators get their first big break when Katrina's car is spotted only a few miles from her house.
The car was recovered right about 7:50 that night, roughly 2 hours after Todd had made the report. It was on Ventura, which is about 3 to 4 miles away from the family house.
It was parked near the edge of the river, and it was just abandoned.
This is not a habitual place for anyone to leave their car, so this in itself is strange.
If it's someone who might have attacked her and wanted her vehicle, we suspect that the vehicle would have been moved from the Winnebago County area, and it had not been moved. So we were suspicious then that she was probably not alive.
I mean, this is a girl who is, by every definition, just a fantastic, solid family woman who has a solid job, a career that she's looking to improve. So what we're thinking now is something suspicious, something foul had happened to Katrina.
To solve the mystery, investigators will need to piece together the last 24 hours of her life.
It's a puzzle, and each piece you have to see where it fits to make a story, to make a case. So timeline is everything.
But with no sign of Katrina, detectives have their work cut out for them.
There's forensic evidence that you can obtain from your victim, which will narrow your timeline. Without a crime scene, we just don't know. We're still kind of shooting in the dark here.
The community of Machesney Park bands together to help find Katrina Smith.
Hundreds of people literally come out from the community searching everywhere. They were instructed anything that they thought was unusual or suspicious to right away call us, and we would have our crime scene officers come out and gather up that evidence.
After hours of searching, authorities find some unsettling items belonging to Katrina.
We located her cellular phone, which was found in a bush that was not far from the marital home in the area of the Rock River. We also located her purse, which was found in that same area a short distance away.
This is not consistent with someone who just took the day off work and is playing hooky, or someone who has decided to go missing or make themselves disappear.
The abandoned vehicle, along with the personal items, are an ominous sign.
What I'm thinking is that someone has probably killed Katrina. And I don't think at this point it's someone who was a total stranger, because they left all of her valuables. They didn't take her car, they didn't take her purse.
The first person investigators interview is Katrina's husband, Todd, who filed the missing persons report.
Todd was distraught. He was so concerned about her. He loved her. They had just taken an anniversary trip and celebrated their 7-year marriage.
The partner's the first person that the investigators look at because that's the person that has the most emotional investment into the victim. Whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband or wife, that's always the person that seems to be the most connected.
Todd is cooperative and willing to answer any questions that come his way.
I'm asking him, does she have a gambling problem? Todd tells me no. She wouldn't do that. Does she have a drug problem? Nope, that's out of the question. Does she have a problem with having a relationship outside the family, outside of him? Absolutely not. They both supposedly had been cheated on in the past, so that would never come up. That would never be a focus of any problems. Todd explained that to us, that their marriage was excellent.
But Katrina has been staying at a friend's condominium, which raises questions for detectives.
Why is she staying somewhere else and you're staying at the family home?
He indicated that there were no issues in the marriage. Katrina was house sitting for her friend at the condominium, and that everything was fine.
Detectives question Todd about the last time he saw Katrina.
He tells us that Katrina had arrived home at about 6 p.m. He said that she arrived at the home to do laundry because she had a job interview the next morning. Todd had told us that she was very concerned about her appearance for the interview, so she wanted to go out and grab a new outfit. So she left the home at 9 o'clock p.m. to do some shopping for her job interview.
That night, Katrina was planning to sleep at the condo she was looking after. An avid football fan, she was looking forward to the game.
She was a Bears fan. She didn't want to miss the game. And so she wanted to get back to her friend's condo to watch the game. He had sent her a message at about 11 p.m. that night saying sweet dreams and expected to hear back from her. He didn't, so he figured she was probably in bed asleep because she was very focused on this job interview for the next morning.
Detectives searched the condo, looking for clues about what may have happened to Katrina.
There was no sign that Katrina had slept there the night before or had been there at all. We now know that she never made it back to the condominium. And so the question is, what has happened in between that time period?
Detectives have now determined Katrina was likely killed between 7:30 a.m. and 9 p.m. the night before, on October 22nd. Armed with this information, they questioned Todd about his whereabouts during this time period.
After Katrina left the family home that night, Todd had told us that he did do some emailing on his computer and then went to bed. Now, we know from Todd's cell phone that he did text Katrina at about 11 p.m. that night or shortly after 11 p.m. and said, sweet dreams, good night. The next day, Todd had appointments to go out on, but during the morning, he worked from home and he did some emails.
Basically, the computer that he would have been working from home on confirmed that he was at home.
With Todd's alibi checking out, detectives now shift their focus to other potential suspects.
We're looking for any speck of information that can give us a lead that may be able to help us determine what has happened to her. Todd tells us a couple years prior, they had a peeping Tom at their house. Someone was peeping at their home. It was determined that it was a young man from the neighborhood area.
Whenever you have a peeping Tom in a neighborhood, that is an immediate red flag. Peeping Toms, for years, were dismissed as sort of a nuisance crime. We now know better. Peeping Toms are actually a very high-risk category of voyeur. These behaviors often escalate to actual attacks.
This could have been a person lurking around the home to potentially attack her once she had left the home.
In the investigation, we find out the young man's actually connected to Katrina and Todd through a church youth organization. He lives in the neighborhood. He has been to the house before. We want to look into that. That's a potential lead. I mean, if he's peeping 2 years ago, has his behavior progressed to murder?
Working a theory that a peeping Tom who targeted Katrina in the past might have turned violent, detectives hunt him down.
Somebody who's spying on people or looking in on people, say through their windows, they're engaging in obtaining intimate information about that person without their consent. The majority of people don't escalate into hands-on offenders, people who would rape or murder, but it can happen.
We go back through all the reports of anything that has happened in that neighborhood that's suspicious. And there was a second report of a peeper in that same neighborhood. It was reported by a different woman who had a very similar resemblance to Katrina.
Detectives canvass the neighborhood for information on a potential stalker when they notice a video surveillance camera at a neighbor's home.
We asked the owner for the video, and that video was not a great video. It's dark outside, it's raining heavily, but in that video, it discloses a figure crossing his yard on the 22nd, late at night while it's raining.
The person appeared to be walking in the direction of Katrina and Todd's home at approximately 11:30 p.m. You could not tell who the individual was, but what you could tell is that it appeared to be a male. It appeared to be someone of small stature.
Then this figure goes across his yard and into a field. Now, who's gonna be out in a rainstorm like that, cutting through a field? It's just something that really raises red flags.
Identifying this person could be the break detectives need to unravel the mystery of Katrina's disappearance.
Is this the young man that was peeping 2 years ago? We need to look at him and find out, is there any potential of him being a valid suspect in the disappearance of Katrina? Is that minute possibility may be the key to open up the whole case.
Detectives track down the peeping Tom, who's living several hours away.
This individual was in fact in college and was on the college campus at the time that Katrina went missing.
He tells detectives he never left campus that night. They check the school's security logs and video, which confirm the young man's story.
law enforcement was able to substantiate that he was nowhere near Katrina the night she went missing, nor the marital home.
With the Peeping Tom theory proving to be a dead end, detectives return to the timeline, hoping it will reveal something new about Katrina Smith's final steps on the day she disappeared.
Katrina Smith worked as an HR representative. She had worked in that field for approximately 4 to 5 years. She was very well liked by her coworkers and her supervisors. Christina, her supervisor, had last seen her on October 22nd, that Monday, at approximately 5 p.m. when Katrina had left work.
Talking with Katrina's supervisor, detectives learn about an alarming incident that recently took place at Katrina's work.
Christina tells us it was during a lunch hour at Cameron Industries where a vehicle had pulled through the parking lot and disseminated about 300 or so flyers.
The flyer was very derogatory, and it was disparaging the character of Katrina Smith.
Why would anybody disseminate flyers through a parking lot of a business, ridiculing and demeaning Katrina? So this is very disturbing.
This is someone whose anger justifies and rationalizes what they do next. It could be distributing flyers one day, posting things on social media one day. It could be something much worse another day.
Initially, it was not reported to the police because everyone thought it was just an isolated incident. But after she went missing, we were able to recover the video.
The driver of that vehicle, he or she, is disguised with a wig, glasses, and unfortunately, the vehicle, although it was black, we had no license plate because the license plates were not on the vehicle.
From the video, it's impossible to identify the car or the driver, but detectives have gained a shocking new detail about Katrina's personal life.
The flyer also indicated that she was having an affair with someone and was cheating on her husband.
So now we have a flyer that's being disseminated by an unknown suspect that's referring to Katrina having a relationship with somebody at work named Guy.
Guy Gabriel is a recently divorced co-worker who has been seen spending time with Katrina.
We're getting this information from Christina at work that there is rumors that Guy Gabriel and Katrina are having a relationship.
Katrina had eventually started to confide in Christina that there were marital issues and that the marriage was not going well.
This was something that was never mentioned by Todd Smith in the initial interview. We don't know that Todd Smith has any knowledge of their relationship. And as a matter of fact, in his statements, he swore that they had gone through some relationship problems in the past and that they would never seek comfort outside the home.
Detectives learn more about Katrina's relationship with Guy Gabriel.
When our crime scene officers ended up diving into Katrina's phone, we confirmed that Guy Gabriel and Katrina were having a romantic relationship. They went out a couple times for lunch a few times and talked, and she shared problems with Guy. But then eventually that relationship became closer. And he had come to the point where their conversations had been about Katrina divorcing Todd Smith.
Investigators bring Guy Gabriel into the station for questioning.
He was irritated a bit that we wanted a formal interview.
They ask him to recount the last time he saw Katrina.
Sunday night, which was the 21st, Guy Gabriel and Katrina had stayed together at Kelly's condo. On Monday morning, Guy Gabriel gets up. This is the morning of the 22nd, and he sees her off to work.
The next time Guy communicates with Katrina is when she returns to her home that night after work.
The last communication that we believe Katrina made to Guy Gabriel was at approximately 7:30 p.m. when she indicated she wanted to be at the condominium for Monday Night Football.
Katrina may have only texted Guy once that night, but he was texting her nonstop.
The night of October 22nd, he's on edge, waiting to hear from Katrina on whether or not she was going to disclose to Todd that she wanted a divorce. That night, their text messages indicate that Guy was very concerned about, have you told him yet? How's things going? He wants her to tell Todd that the relationship's over with. Now that does send up red flags, because now you have somebody who is having a relationship with Katrina that appears to be very obsessed with her leaving her husband.
This can very quickly escalate to become a very dangerous, volatile situation. You introduce jealousy, you introduce resentment, and those can be powerful motivators for someone who lacks basic impulse control and who needs to be in control.
We don't know that she's ready at that point for sure to tell Todd that she wants things done with. Maybe she's changing her mind, maybe something else has happened. Did Guy Gabriel then get upset and something happened between the hours of 9 o'clock and the following morning? At this point, we don't know exactly where he's texting her from. Is he texting her from around the corner? Is he watching the house? Is it possible that after she leaves the home, as Todd says, to go back and shop, that her and Guy Gabriel meet up? He is our primary focus. He is our primary suspect. Could this be the guy? We have to investigate him.
Detectives are zeroing in on a new person of interest in the disappearance of Katrina Smith, her secret boyfriend, Guy Gabriel.
So, did Guy Gabriel have any contact with her that night, either near the home, or did they meet up later that night, and then things went awry from there? That is a possibility.
They look into Guy's movements in the critical window during which Katrina went missing.
Guy Gabriel indicated that Sunday night he had stayed at the condominium with Katrina Smith. Katrina went to work that morning, and then that evening he left to go to work because he worked the graveyard shift.
Guy's shift began at 8 p.m., and he said he was at work until 8 a.m. the next morning.
There's always an opportunity to leave work, right? So we went to Cameron Industries.
Detectives checked video surveillance and the security logs at Guy Gabriel's workplace. They show that he was in the building the whole night.
We were able to pull all of the video footage of him being in and out, supervising other individuals who had interacted with him.
If Guy Gabriel would have left Cameron Industries that evening during work, we would have seen it on that video. So we were able to eliminate Guy Gabriel.
With Guy Gabriel now in the clear, the investigation hits a roadblock.
It's frustrating. I try to take a personal approach to every case I work, I really do. This case for me was about Katrina, and once you learn about Katrina and what a wonderful person she was and what a wonderful family she has, you want to do the best job you can for them. You want to solve this case, and you want to do it right.
Investigators look to the family for more information regarding Katrina's final movements.
Bruce was Katrina's stepfather. He basically raised Katrina with her mom, Vicki.
He was with us. He was so concerned about her.
Detectives ask Bruce if he knows of anyone who would want to harm Katrina.
He tells us that Katrina feels that she's being followed and stalked by somebody. She just didn't know by whom. Katrina was so concerned that she has a conversation with a Verizon employee talking about, is there any way somebody could bug or clone her phone because she feels like somebody's keeping track of her and following her. And then all of a sudden on the 19th, he gets this text from her asking about getting a gun for protection. So, the alarm bells are going off with him.
Talk of getting a gun just days before she goes missing suggests Katrina was looking to defend herself.
It is apparent that Katrina was in fear of something and that she felt that she was being followed or stalked by somebody.
Katrina knew that her life was in danger and in jeopardy.
As detectives work to uncover the identity of who could be stalking Katrina, something unusual catches their eye.
Every day, people are searching for Katrina. They are searching for evidence. Todd is at the search party scenes, but does not appear to be engaged. Todd is conducting interviews with the local media. There's crying with no tears.
It's been horrible. I just wanted to come home.
It's just like his emotions weren't genuine. His crocodile tears, his sadness and everything.
You know, there's emotion without emotion. And we are seeing this play out before the cameras.
For good investigators, gut instincts are honed. This is where investigators need to pay particular attention to the nuances, the micro expressions, as we call them, of potential persons of interest.
I'm a detective that watches behavior. Todd's behavior was very inconsistent with somebody that was suffering from a missing wife, a missing loved one.
Based on his suspicious behavior, detectives take another look at Todd, now as a potential suspect.
Todd had told us the marriage was excellent. He maintained the whole time that they weren't going to get divorced.
But when detectives talk to Katrina's friends, they get a different story.
October 13th, she went out for a girls' night with her girlfriends. During that night, she told one of her girlfriends, Jill, that she was not happy in the marriage, and she had brought up the word divorce several times in the conversation. The night of the 22nd, Jill's husband made a phone call to Todd. Todd told him that Katrina was coming over to do laundry and that she wanted to talk to him. And Jill's husband said, well, that sounds good. Maybe that's good. Todd says, no, I think it's done. I think she's done with me.
This tips off detectives that Todd is aware his marriage is in trouble, which is not what he initially told police.
The whole time, Todd is telling us the marriage is great, no problems in the marriage, and everything's going well. But Katrina is relaying to her friends, her co-workers, that her marriage isn't good. So the statements that Todd gave us, we're able to pick apart several of those statements as untruths.
As detectives become more suspicious of Todd, the forensic results from Katrina's car finally come in. The discovery is shocking.
It was pretty much neon lights when the luminol was sprayed into the trunk of the vehicle. We were able to see the outline of a body that had been placed in the trunk of her vehicle.
How do you explain blood in a trunk? It was apparent that someone had been placed in that trunk. We believe that blood was Katrina's.
Detectives have found Katrina's blood in the trunk of her car. This new evidence is key, revealing more about the disappearance.
Katrina had bled out significantly. There was even blood on the bumper of the vehicle, so we know that when she was placed in the vehicle, she was most likely substantially incapacitated.
Sometimes you have some, even without a body, evidence of a crime. You have some blood spatter. You have what's called exsanguination, which is blood volume, which in terms of no-body homicides is as close to a smoking gun as you can get.
Now we know we have a crime scene at the car, whether it happened there or somewhere else, and the car was just used as transportation to hide, eliminate the body.
With suspicion now building around Katrina's husband, Todd, investigators dig into his background.
We know that Todd Smith had a business where he was a financial advisor, and this was his own business. It was not as productive and successful as he had portrayed it to be. He was facing a fraud lawsuit in federal court. Katrina was actually the breadwinner in the family. She was the one that paid for the mortgage on the home, that paid all of the bills.
Todd's potential motive starts to become crystal clear.
We also learned that Todd was very possessive and jealous of Katrina, and the fact that she might now want to move on and get a divorce was very disturbing to Todd.
As detectives look deeper into Todd's past, they learn something even more alarming.
In the investigation, I ended up speaking with a family member of Todd Smith's, and his name was Justin. Justin was a half-brother to Todd. The story was that at 17 years old, Todd ended up disconnecting a gas line from the stove and ended up blowing up the home in an attempt to kill Justin, his sister, the mom, and the dad.
At the time, Todd was sentenced to 30 months probation, and he became permanently estranged from his family.
It paints a picture of someone who appears to be a meek and mild individual, but underneath there's a seething pot of anger and jealousy that erupts in a violent manner that could end in someone's death.
When we learn more about Todd's past, that he's this troubled, violent, fire-starting teenager, this Jekyll and Hyde character emerged that then casts, I think, further doubt on all of his stories.
As detectives uncover Todd's criminal past, they get a phone call that turns the case on its head.
Todd is upset. Todd is very upset. And he discusses how upset he is about Katrina's blood being found in the trunk of the vehicle.
For detectives, this is a red flag. No one in the sheriff's department has released the information about Katrina's blood being found in the car.
He tells us one of Katrina's family members told him about it. So we're talking to the family members. None of them knew anything about it. So how did Todd know about blood in the trunk?
Only the killer would know that there would be blood in the trunk. That had not been released to the public. It had not been disclosed to the family members.
Now believing Todd likely murdered Katrina, investigators search for physical evidence to tie him to the crime.
We searched the computers and we were able to find remnants of this disparaging flyer that had been distributed at Katrina's workplace before she went missing.
Now, how does that flyer, outlining a relationship, very rudely might I ask, between Guy and Katrina, how does that flyer end up on his computer? Did Katrina put it there? No. Who's the only other person that could have authored that on his laptop? Him?
The individual distributing the flyers in disguise, in fact, ended up being Todd.
Todd did everything he could to try to erase everything, but he doesn't realize that a computer keeps secrets, even when you try to delete them.
Todd passing out these types of flyers and trying to degrade, humiliate Katrina is horrible enough in itself. This, in my mind, has violent motivation as well.
When investigators comb through Todd's computer, it yields even more clues.
We also discover a tracking software, which coincides with a small box that one of our detectives located and right away identified it as some kind of housing for a tracker.
Before she disappeared, Katrina believed she was being followed, and she was right. Todd had been tracking her every move.
That tracking software that was on the computer was forensically analyzed by one of our detectives. He was able to show that the night Katrina disappeared, the night of October 22nd, that tracker was taken from the car, then seen following a path through the woods, which coincides with the resident who has the videotape of that figure going across that gentleman's front yard. It then concludes its tracking just a very short distance from the Smith home.
What we believe Todd did was after he had dumped her car, he removed the tracking device, but he thought it was off and it was not.
This is that huge piece of the puzzle. This is bigger than just one piece. This is a whole huge corner of that puzzle.
Katrina's husband, Todd, has become the prime suspect in her murder. Detectives bring him in for questioning and confront him about what they've discovered.
I confront him with the flyers. I confront him with the marriage. I confront him with the track stick. I confront him with everything. His response was to ignore those confrontations. He didn't say a word. He didn't respond to my accusations. If you were being accused of murder and didn't do it, wouldn't you come back at me? He didn't do that. He just sat there. And then at the very end, he said, "Didn't do it? I want a lawyer." And then he pointed up at the camera and said, "I want a lawyer." And he was screaming. He was so upset.
Detectives have linked Todd Smith to his wife's murder, but they still don't arrest him.
They have nearly all the circumstantial evidence they need, but they hold out and stay focused, looking for that final piece to close the circle. Good evidence often can mean the difference between making an arrest and someone being acquitted at trial, and making an arrest and making sure that person never gets out.
Then on November 9th, 3 weeks after Katrina Smith went missing, investigators get the break they've been looking for.
An off-duty firefighter noticed what appeared to be something in the water that shouldn't be there.
Unfortunately, through that investigation and through that autopsy, we were able to determine it was Katrina Smith.
Individuals always think that when they toss a body in the river that they get rid of evidence, but they really do not. I knew eventually Katrina would surface and her body would be able to tell me how she died and how she spent the last minutes of her life.
Katrina's body is badly decomposed, but the coroner declares the cause of death as blunt force trauma to the head.
She was probably most likely struck from behind, and defensive wounds on her forearms would have indicated an attempt to protect herself.
The type of weapon that would cause those types of injuries is some kind of cylindrical object.
We were able to determine from the evidence that that cylindrical object was more than likely a pipe or a bat.
This was a brutal attack on Katrina Smith. The attack showed that the individual who attacked her was very aggressive, was very emotional, and was going to make sure that she did not survive the attack.
Detectives search the Smith home, looking for the murder weapon.
The bat was found during the execution of one of the search warrants in the garage in a corner. The testing of the bat showed that there was presence of human blood in different areas of the bat. It ended up being Katrina's blood.
Luminol is sprayed throughout the garage where the murder weapon was found.
Crime scene saw what they believed was evidence that a large amount of blood had been cleaned up from the area. We could see that the place that she was killed was in the garage.
They finally have the physical evidence proving Todd killed his wife.
We believe that Todd took his marriage vows literally, till death do us part. And his motive in killing Katrina was to maintain her as his wife forever.
Investigators are now able to complete the picture of what they believe happened to Katrina Smith in the final 24 hours of her life.
October 22nd, she went to work at approximately 8 a.m. She got off work at approximately 5:30 p.m.
She got to the family residence at about 6 p.m., where she started her laundry for her job interview the following morning at 7:30.
That night, Katrina tells Todd she wants a divorce.
Todd is pressuring her to stay in the marriage and not to seek a divorce.
Investigators determined that Guy Gabriel was trying to help Katrina.
We believe that she is looking for someone to support her in her decision to end the marriage. Guy is providing her that support through their text messages that night.
We believe what happened next is when she got ready to leave the home and go back to the condo, Todd was very upset.
We believe that when she is leaving the home, Todd struck Katrina to the back of the head with a bat. She then attempts to protect her head by putting up her arms, which shows linear marks that fit the shape of the bat, as he continued to beat her repeatedly. He then dragged her to the back of her vehicle and placed her in the fetal position in the trunk of that car, where she died. We believe that Todd drove Katrina's body to the bridge shortly after 11. He dumped Katrina's body into the river.
He then proceeded to drive the car to Ventura and Obispo, where he ditched the car. Then at 11:24, we have a text from Todd to Katrina's phone that says, "Sweet dreams, good night."
But Todd sent that text to his wife after he killed her.
The last text message he sent to her was a signal of, you know what, you will forever be my wife. You will die my wife.
Todd Smith is your classic sociopath in that he has these malignant impulse control issues. The sociopath can pretend to conform now and again, but whether it's provocation or just something they see as belonging to them, they will take it and they will use whatever force they have to.
On November 21st, 2012, Todd Smith is charged with first-degree murder.
The timeline basically put this case together and tied it in a bow. It was rock solid. We were able to pinpoint his movements. We were able to pinpoint Katrina's movements. And when she went off the grid, we knew that in order for her to be off the grid, she was most likely dead.
After a 2-week trial, the jury finds Todd Smith guilty. He's sentenced to 59 years in prison.
The murder of Katrina Smith was just a brutal, heinous crime. She was a beautiful young woman who wanted to live her life. She just wanted to live it without Todd. And instead of allowing her to do that, he decided to take her life. Todd believed that he could commit the perfect murder, and I think his downfall was the arrogance that he could get away with it.
She wasn't wrong. Her instincts were right there. She was being stalked. She just didn't know by whom. It was her own husband stalking her for years.
4 years after Katrina Smith is murdered, the case is closed.
I think about her all the time. I have pictures of her during her beautiful life that her family has shared with me, and I keep those pictures close at hand as a reminder of why we do what we do, more importantly, why I do what I do.
With every police officer, with every detective, with everybody in law enforcement, there are those cases that attach themselves to your soul, to your heart. Katrina and her family, they have permanently attached themselves to my heart.
This was definitely a frenzy. Essentially, the person went berserk.
A vicious slaying.
People were terrified. People need a reason that bad things happen.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
They were sisters, but there was no sisterly love.
I'm just thinking, what do I do if he freaks out?
There was a lot of hate. There was a lot of discontent within that family circle.
The truth will be revealed.
What stood out to me as this crime scene is there was no rhyme or reason. It just didn't make sense. If he did this, he needs to pay for it.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. On the banks of the St. Joseph River sits Niles, Michigan, a community brimming with civic pride.
So Niles it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. It's the kind of community where you could meet a stranger and you both know the same person. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of violent crime here.
If crime happens, people are more than willing to help you. People respect police. Yes sir, no sir. Here, people get involved.
But on one cold February afternoon, something so shocking happens, no one knows what to do.
Yes, County.
This is a 911 transfer. The gentleman is saying there's been a shooting.
Okay, where's the suspect at?
There's no suspect. Their door was open. We were trying to find them all morning. They were supposed to be at work, and I walked in the house, and they've been shot.
We received a 911 call from a father who says that his son and his daughter-in-law are deceased. He thinks it's a homicide.
Okay, sir?
Yes.
Have you been inside the house?
I have.
Okay. Are they injured or are they deceased?
They're deceased. Oh, my God.
I immediately called one of the troopers on a cell phone, and he said, "You need to get over here."
The victims are Carolyn and John Tarwacki, two beloved musicians who live with their nephew, Keelan.
John and Carolyn met late in life. They met online. They were just in a great place in their life because they had found each other, they were happily married.
Carolyn was a good soul, as I put it. She used to pick up old music instruments, and she would repair them and try to help kids who couldn't afford an instrument. And John was a Navy veteran. Hard workers, both of them.
Tasked with investigating their deaths are detectives Fabian Suarez of the Michigan State Police and local detective Kristen Daly, who has lived in this community for 20 years.
When we arrived there, that's when the light bulb went off for me that, oh, these are people that I know. My sister-in-law was very good friends with Carolyn in high school. So there was an immediate connection there, and I felt a lot more responsibility.
Detectives begin analyzing the crime scene, trying to imagine what might have taken place.
We walk into the foyer area of the house. Obviously, we take a quick moment, we stand, we scan. I can see John Tarwacki. He's got stab wounds on his back. We walk over to the right, there's a living room. We look in there and we see Carolyn. We look to the left, there's a bathroom there. One of the first things I notice is there's a towel on the floor with hair clippings, and there's a razor on the sink. So to me, it tells me he was shaving his head. My gut feeling is the killer was confronted by John. He takes the first shot, he hits John right in the jaw. He shoots again, John throws up his arm, and then he turns and like he's trying to escape, and he collapses right there. So now John is out of the picture. Now the killer can focus his attention on Carolyn.
At the time that you first looked at her, it was almost hard to tell exactly what had happened to her. She had been badly beaten. Being beaten is usually very immediate. It usually dictates that that's somebody that you know really well and you're really, really angry at when you see that level of injury and that level of violence visited upon somebody. And later it was determined that she was both stabbed and shot. And that's an extreme level of violence against the nicest person that you literally would ever meet. It made absolutely no sense.
To find out who ruthlessly killed this loving couple, police must reconstruct the final 24 hours of the Tarwackis' lives.
A timeline's important in every homicide case. You have to know where all your players are in any given moment to create, either to create an alibi or to break an alibi, to set your timeline so you can discover when was their vulnerability, when did the murder occur.
Investigators start building John and Carolyn's timeline by interviewing the person who found them, John's father.
When I first met John Tarwacki, Sr., obviously he was very distraught. How else could you be? You just walked in, you find your son and your daughter-in-law murdered. He said John and Carolyn had an 8 a.m. meeting at the high school. They never showed up. This is not like Carolyn. She will not miss work. She will not miss appointments, anything like that. So the school called Quinlan and Babbage, which is where they worked, and said, Carolyn never showed up. What happened?
John's sister worked for the company too, so they called John's father, like, can you go check and see what's going on?
He, in turn, said he tried calling the house, he tried calling the cell phones, and nothing happened, so he decided to get in the car and go knock on the door.
Hoping to flush out the Tarwacki's timeline further, detectives reach out to Carolyn's mother, Sharon.
Sharon tells me that she talked with Carolyn on the phone that morning. She was having some issues with her computer, so she was just venting some frustration to her mom. Just a normal touch and base with your mom in the morning. Sharon said there was nothing about that phone call that made her suspicious.
Detectives pull Sharon's cell phone records and verify that the call started at 6:10 a.m. and lasted exactly 12 minutes.
The last time she talks to her mother is at 6:22, says goodbye, not realizing either one that it's the last time.
But what happened after she hung up with her mother is still a mystery. Knowing that Carolyn was on her computer that morning gives them something to work with. Investigators dig into her laptop logs.
Carolyn logged onto the computer at 6:43 a.m. and then 7:03, the computer goes dormant, meaning that there's no longer any interaction with the keyboard.
Every time you hit a key on any device, there is a record of that. And when we see habitual use and ongoing keystrokes and then a sudden stoppage, that stoppage point serves as a great start for what happened next. Were they interrupted? Were they pulled away from the computer, or were they actually murdered at that particular time?
Based on when the computer goes dormant, Carolyn and John could have been killed any time between 7:03 a.m. and just before their bodies were found at 12:45 p.m. The bodies are sent off for autopsy, and the forensics team starts scouring the house for potential murder weapons.
We're looking for a knife, and we're looking for a gun at that point.
We don't know if he used one of the kitchen knives. So we took all the knives that looked like they could have been used for the murders, and we sent those to the medical examiner.
As they continue to work their way through the crime scene, investigators struggle to come up with a rational theory for the murders.
What stood out to me as this crime scene is there was no rhyme or reason. There was no sign of any forced entry whatsoever. There were valuables laying around. You could think it was a breaking and entering. Someone had gone in to steal things, but there was computers, there were laptops, iPads, cash money laying around. There was even prescription drugs in the medicine cabinets.
It's not until they make their way to the back of the house that the first clue into the identity of the killer reveals itself.
From where we're standing, I can hear a dog going crazy, and it turns out this is Wrigley, a 200-pound mastiff.
The Tarwackis had a large dog. It was ginormous, and it was on the back porch area. And so in their kitchen, you turned and you could either go down the basement or you can go out into a back porch.
Once we get to the back door, that's when we see footprints. One set of footprints coming in, one set of footprints coming out.
The footprints showed that somebody had entered and exited through the back door, which was unusual because they would have had to get past that dog. And that dog was incredibly protective of Carolyn. So normally, if you are a stranger and you open someone's back porch door and you are greeted by a large Mastiff, you turn around and walk away. You don't continue to enter the home. And if it's a stranger, why is the level of violence on Carolyn so great? That told us that it was somebody that they knew.
Now, they're hoping this path will lead them to the killer's doorstep.
You have to work fast, you gotta work furiously, because if he did it once and he did it twice, he can definitely do it again.
Investigators believe that the rage-fueled homicide of Carolyn and John Tarwacki was an intentional act, committed by someone who knew them.
A crime like this could be really devastating for a small community. The word would get out, and it would likely take over the town within a few hours. There would be a sense of, we're all in danger, who's next?
The only piece of hard evidence investigators have from the crime scene is a trail of footprints at the back of the house.
Well, we're pretty sure there's one killer. There's only one set of footprints.
The stride on the way in was short, like a normal walking stride, and the stride on the way out was wider, like a running stride. It tells us that, when he approached the house, he was calm, and when he left the house, he was agitated and fleeing because he had just committed the murders.
Once we get photographs, they are able to get us a good shoe size and a very good tread pattern.
We could actually look at the picture and see 12 in the shoe impression, so we knew it was a size 12 shoe. We were able to confirm that it was a Route 66 shoe that was put out by Kmart, but discontinued in 2008.
So this tells me this person's wearing old shoes that were cheap, basically. It's not a person that has a lot of money, that's spending a lot of money.
Using the footprints, detectives follow the killer's path.
There's an easement. Nobody really knows, unless you're from that area, you're not gonna know that easement there. It's kind of like a power line easement. So those footprints, we were able to follow them away from the house towards what's Yankee Street. So we do a neighborhood canvas. It's just as it's called. We go to every door within a mile, north, west, south, east, every direction. We knock on the doors.
In terms of canvassing, I have said for years that canvassing is the most important and yet simultaneously overlooked area of any investigation. This is the nitty-gritty. This is the unglamorous area of police work that solves cases. You need to find out who was home at the time of the murder, as close to the murder as possible.
One of the apartment's investigators' canvas belongs to Sherry Lince. When they knock on her door, they find her son Keith there as well.
Keith is known to us. He's had many, many problems with law enforcement. We know the Lince family. They're just a lot of family members have been, unfortunately, been on the wrong side of the law.
Detective Suarez consults local detective Daly on whether or not she thinks Keith could be a person of interest.
I'd heard the name. I knew that he was in trouble and had been in trouble and had a criminal history, but I wasn't familiar with him like being connected to the Tarwackis at all.
Investigators question Keith about whether he knew the Tarwackis and his whereabouts that morning when they were killed.
Keith Lince says he may have walked past the residence and may have waved at John Tarwacki, but he says no, he doesn't know him. And Sherry Lince, she's able to confirm to us that Keith was at the home at 8 a.m. She said she woke up to go to work and Keith was asleep on the couch. She also is able to alibi him, saying that she actually took Keith to work on the morning of the homicides.
Satisfied with the Lince's accounting of their whereabouts, police move on. And it pays off almost right away.
Later on that morning, we found a neighbor who said, yep, I was outside smoking a cigarette, starting my car up. and that's when I see a young man running down the alleyway. She is positive that that was, I believe, at 7:45 a.m. Those footprints were right by her house, maybe 30 feet from her deck. She told us, she goes, you never see anybody going through there at this time of the morning. Nobody ever sees there, and that's what caught her attention.
This new information is critical. Assuming the running man is the killer, investigators are now able to pinpoint when the Tarwackis were murdered.
So as best we could figure, it happened sometime from the time when Carolyn's computer goes dormant to 7:45. So it's almost like a 40-minute window that this murder could have occurred in.
It's an unusual time of day for a double homicide to take place.
It was very brazen. Nobody commits a homicide when everybody is getting ready to go to work. You're taking the chance of being seen. There's too many eyes out. Too many people are awake. Most homicides are going to involve at the time of darkness when not many people are around or you cannot be seen.
The eyewitness didn't get a good look at the man's face, but she says he was tall.
She said that she saw a white male, right around 6 feet tall, hard to pin down his age, between 20 and 30 years old, she thought, wearing a dark, whether it was a jacket or a hoodie, but he had a hood up, and he was running past her house out towards the main road.
The description immediately rings a bell for Detective Daly. It sounds like it could be Keelan, Carolyn and John's teenage nephew, who has been living with them.
I was familiar with Keelan because his younger brother had been on the same T-ball team with my son. So at that point, Fabian's like, oh, well, you can be the one to go talk to him at the school then.
Keelan is the son of Carolyn's sister, Katie, and her husband, David.
Keelan is kind of a combative individual. One of the reasons he was living with John and Carolyn was because he didn't get along with David, and they had fought quite a bit. The fights consisted of a lot of yelling and screaming. So I'm just thinking, what do I do if he freaks out? What do I do if he's actually the suspect and he knows, immediately why I'm there?
We know that Keelan lives at the house. He automatically becomes our first suspect because he was probably the last people that saw John and Carolyn alive. So I asked Kristen Daly to conduct the interview because I wanted that female perspective to talk to him, probably get more information. We have to determine as quickly as possible, is he involved? Did he commit the crime? Does he know who committed the crime?
When I got to the school and they brought him out of his classroom, he looked confused. He knew who I was, but he couldn't really figure out why I was there. Keelan's sitting there and he's looking at us. I could just see the conflicting play of emotion on his face. And then Fabian tells him exactly why we were there. He said, John and Carolyn are dead, and we need to talk to you. And Keelan completely melted down. He just completely had a breakdown right there. I said, I need you to go through your morning. I need you to tell me exactly what you did. I need you to tell me exactly, as best you can remember, what time things happened. He told me that his Aunt Carolyn woke him up in the morning, shortly after 6. He leaves the house about 6:30 in the morning, and his grandmother lives 2 doors down from John and Carolyn. So at 6:35, he goes to his grandmother's, talks to her really quick. He grabs some pop and some beef jerky. He's there for maybe not even 10 minutes, if that long, because he catches the bus then at 6:45.
Detective Daly checks Keelan's alibi with his grandmother, Sharon.
Sharon says she gets off the phone with Carolyn at 6:22. Keelan shows up within 5-10 minutes of that phone conversation to Sharon's home. Keelan is calm, he is clean, so he wouldn't have had time to commit those murders, and he would have been a mess physically.
We follow up with the school with the times the bus is there, cameras in the school. We know he walked into the school. We talk to the teachers. We know he walked into the classroom.
He had a backpack, and there was an empty pop bottle in the outside of his backpack, and also a bag of jerky. So that corroborated his story. Also, there was not a good motive for Keelan. He was in a really good place. John and Carolyn lost their lives, but Keelan lost his future.
With Keelan's whereabouts verified from 6:22 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., detectives conclude he couldn't have killed the Tarwackis. According to Keelan, he hated living with his mother and stepfather and wanted to stay with Carolyn and John permanently.
Once Keelan moved out of the home, his grades picked up, and he really liked it. Obviously, there was no domestic problems. There was no fighting, anything like that in the house. He really liked living there.
Detectives then discover that the Tarwackis had filed for legal guardianship, so Keelan wouldn't have to return to his parents' home. In fact, the attorney had served the papers to Keelan's mother, Katie, just 2 days before the murders took place.
I knew Katie, so I was already familiar with her temperament. She doesn't care what you think about her, and she will tell you exactly what's on her mind. She can come across as very aggressive, very combative, and Katie did not want Carolyn to have guardianship, and she was angry. And knowing Katie's personality and knowing that she could be pretty aggressive, and just seeing the level of violence visited on Carolyn, your mind goes to that first person who's angry. And that circled back to Katie.
The investigation into the brutal double homicide of Carolyn and John Tarwacki is zeroing in on Carolyn's sister, Katie.
When we interview Katie, basically what she tells us, growing up, Carolyn was treated better than she was. They were sisters, but there was no sisterly love. Katie despised Carolyn. She tells us, hey, I didn't kill my sister, but I'm not going to miss her. She told me, I've always believed that Carolyn was trying to take my son because she didn't have kids of her own. And she really believed this, so obviously this raises a flag.
It almost seemed like she didn't care. A normal person, you tell them that their brother or sister has died. It doesn't matter if they fought 20 minutes ago, they're devastated. This is their sibling, this is somebody they love. And she didn't act like your normal sibling to a victim of a horrendous crime. She's a little detached.
When people don't react as expected in a police interview, it immediately throws up a red flag. Why are they acting this way? Are they potentially involved in this crime? Do they dislike, a person enough to commit an act of violence? And in this case, you're wondering, could this sister have engaged in something violent towards this couple?
But some things just don't add up with this theory. The eyewitness said she saw a man between 20 and 30 years old fleeing the scene, not a middle-aged woman. And she said this happened at 7:45 a.m.
Katie actually lived pretty much next door to me. She is a bus driver for this same school district, and she drove the bus past my house every morning. So we were able to confirm with the bus garage that yes, Katie showed up to work, she came on time, and she was driving her bus. And there just wasn't time during a bus route for her to stop at the house and commit this murder.
Detectives consider a different theory.
I know that she didn't commit the homicide, but maybe the husband decided to do it. Through police reports, we know that David drank. We believe he had a drinking problem. And we know that there's a lot of, domestic violence in that home. There was a lot of hate. There was a lot of discontent within that family circle. So if you want to keep your wife happy, you want to keep your family happy, you're going to want to do something to help her.
David was quiet to Katie's, more bombastic, volatile personality, but nobody had any doubt that if she'd asked him to do this, that he would have done that for her.
With David now in their crosshairs, detectives put the timeline to the test to determine where he was when the Tarwackis were killed.
I believe From the timeline that we were built up, we know that the morning of the homicides, David had to take the kids to the babysitters. He says he was there at 7:30 a.m. dropping the kids off. We go to the babysitter, and we were able to substantiate his whereabouts. He works in South Bend, so it takes him almost 20 minutes to get to work. He started work at 8 a.m. We follow up on his work. We know that at that work, they actually have palm scanners to get into the building. We know that he put his palm there, that he scanned his palm, and we know that he was at work. So there was no way that he would have been the killer, that he was involved.
Having eliminated from the suspect pool all three of the people closest to the Tarwackis, detectives are stumped.
There were so many things about this case that didn't flow up from a normal investigative standpoint. We were still really focused at that point on this is somebody that they knew, somebody that was angry with them. And we had talked to everybody that we knew that knew John and Carolyn. We talked to John's, ex-wives. We dug deep into his past trying to find a motive, and just nothing was panning out. Everything was coming up a dead end.
Investigators are forced to consider whether the murders may have been more random than they first appeared.
People were terrified. People need a reason that bad things happen. When there's no reason that something bad has happened, then everybody thinks, then that could be me. And that freaks people out, obviously. We all like to believe that if we just do the right thing at the right time, then we're all safe, but that's not clearly how the world works.
Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And eventually, the case goes cold.
That was the first time that I ever had trouble sleeping after a case. It was awful. It was awful because it was unsolved and just no idea at that point. And the other thing that haunts you is, did you miss something?
As it turns out, they did.
I received a call from the mother, Sharon McKnight, who was cleaning out the house to sell. She is cleaning out the refrigerator, thawing out the freezer, and as she's removing items, she says she found a bloody knife. I was actually here at work. I immediately respond to the location along with one of my troopers. Sure enough, there's a bloody knife in the freezer.
Investigators have just discovered that they missed a key piece of evidence while processing the murder scene of Carolyn and John Tarwacki, a bloody knife.
The sickness feeling that goes over you is like, wow, how did we miss that? We missed it. So, I'm the lead investigator. I have to take responsibility for everything that goes wrong. So, yeah, it's my responsibility to make sure everything was done. It wasn't done properly. The knife is processed. DNA shows that it is Carolyn and it is John's blood on the knife. But unfortunately, there is no third party. We were hoping maybe to find DNA from our suspect that could be identified, but there was not.
Just when things couldn't seem more hopeless, Detective Suarez receives a call that breathes new life into the investigation.
Patricia Wiles, with a local young lady, she had a run-in with the local police officer. She was stopped. She was arrested, I believe, for driving while her license suspended. When they brought her in and they booked her, she told them, I'd like to talk to the detective who's in charge of the Tarwacki homicide because I think I have information as to who killed him. This officer obviously calls me right away at home. I believe it was 3 in the morning or something like that. So I obviously come to work right away. I start interviewing Patricia Wiles, and she brings up the name of Keith Lince. Keith Lince, who we had talked to initially, but was not on the radar.
26-year-old Keith Lince was someone they interviewed on the very first day of the investigation. His mother, Sherry, told them Keith was at home with her at the time of the murder. And back then, they had no reason to doubt her.
Patricia tells us that she was living with Keith Lince's brother or half-brother. And on the night of the homicide, she came to the trailer, and she said Keith was just bouncing all over the place. and kept looking out the window, and she asked him, "What are you doing?" She said, "The cops are after me." And, "Well, why are the cops after you?" And she said, "Because I left my effing footprints in the yard, and they're gonna find me."
Patricia tells them that Keith was heavily into crystal meth, and that night, she was afraid of him.
So when you take crystal meth, what it can do is it can cause agitation, it can cause people to experience suspicious thoughts, paranoia, and sometimes people even start to see or hear things that aren't there. And all of this combined can make social interactions to be very unpredictable with these people. They become very emotionally disinhibited, emotionally dysregulated, and sometimes engage in erratic behavior and, in some cases, explosive violence.
One of Patricia Wild's big alarming concerns was just the way Keith was acting. He was acting berserk, and she said he had a gun in one hand, was waving it around, but she also observed him with a couple other weapons in his belt line.
That's started the ball rolling with Keith Lince, and we really started to dig in on him as our main suspect.
To confirm Patricia's story, Detective Suarez tracks down Keith's baby mama. She's in bad shape.
It turns out that within a month or so, I believe, of the homicides, Keith had choked her, beat her, choked her, and we were able to confirm this through South Bend Police Department records, that we obviously now know he's got the propensity for violence. Now that we really got our teeth sunk into Keith Lince, we start looking for his inner circle. We start getting more calls. The next big break really comes from another ex-girlfriend. She had a birthday party for one of her sons, and the mother told her, "Why do you have Keith Lince here? He killed the Tarwackis. Get him out of my home. I don't want him in my house." So that started a fight. She said she asked him, "Why do people think you killed the Tarwackis?" And he told her, "Well, because they found my footprints there, but I was just taking a shortcut to my grandparents' house."
It seemed believable. If you're gonna make a story up, why do you make the footprints in the snow up? Because we never had released that and people didn't know we had that as evidence.
Detectives now strongly believe Keith murdered Carolyn and John Tarwacki, but they need proof. They go back to Sherry Lince, hoping to break his alibi. She reiterates that Keith was sleeping on the couch at 8 a.m. and that she drove him to work at 9.
So now we're working on it. We have to confirm his timeline. And at that time, he was working at Walmart in Mishawaka, Indiana. We were able to determine through work records that was not true. He never did show up for work. He didn't call in sick. He didn't call in at all. So we know that he's not there. We believe Mom's lying.
If only detectives had checked Keith's alibi back on day 1 of the investigation, they would have realized that he had both the means and the opportunity to kill the Tarwackis.
It's not uncommon to see in a lot of cases that go cold, in this case 3 years. And it doesn't matter if it's 3 months, 3 years, 30 years. I'll often tell investigators, the name of the offender is probably already in the file. He's probably already even been interviewed and falsely or wrongly screened out or excluded. And I say, always go back to what you did first and re-examine it with fresh eyes. And we see in this case, sure enough, he's spoken to in the canvas and not asked the right questions and ruled out.
Obviously, Keith is on the radar now. We tried looking for his whereabouts. We find out that Keith has fled to Nashville, Tennessee. The next day, I had to go to the doctor. My blood pressure was 200/195. We have to track him down. If Keith did this, he needs to pay for it.
Investigators believe Keith Lince killed Carolyn and John Tarwacki. After an exhaustive search, they finally track him down in a Nashville jail, imprisoned on some minor traffic charges.
So Keith and I have history. He doesn't like me, I don't like him. There comes a point in time where you really have to suck up your ego as an investigator. As much as I want to go interview Keith, I know that if I go, he's not going to say a thing. So I sent a couple other detectives to talk to him. They do lengthy interviews with him. He denies being involved. But he also thinks that he can beat a polygraph, and he volunteers to take polygraphs. He failed both tests miserably. So we know that Keith is our main suspect, but we don't have that final nail in the coffin.
But then, they get a phone call from a man by the name of Shane Zimmerman. He says he's got information about the homicide.
Shane Zimmerman is hitting the lotto, hitting all 7 numbers in the Powerball. It's just something that you don't expect out of the blue to come, even though we are on the right trail.
Shane Zimmerman describes himself as a childhood friend of the prime suspect, Keith Lince, who just happens to be sharing a cell with him at this very moment.
Shane says, Keith told me he did it. He can't take it back, but he says he did it, and he was crying one night. He's in his bunk crying. And Shane says, what's wrong? He says, I killed him. I killed those people. He goes, they didn't deserve to die, but I can't take it back.
In order to secure a conviction, investigators need Keith's confession on tape.
Shane Zimmerman didn't want anything. He said, I've screwed up my entire life. He goes, for once in my life, I'm going to do something right.
Shane agrees to wear a wire and heads back into the cell.
But we told him, don't ask questions, you don't interrogate, you don't interview. You just act as a listening post. If he wants to talk about it, you talk, you listen.
On their end, police push Keith in a series of interviews, keeping the murders at the top of his mind.
They said, hey, Keith, we know sometimes you can go into drug-induced hysteria, and this is what happened in this case, isn't it? And, you know, obviously he denied it there, but when he went back into the cell and was talking to Shane, he told Shane, he goes, man, they had it right on. That's what happened.
Finally, Keith breaks down and spills the whole story of the murder to Shane.
Zimmerman was a hammer that we hammered that nail home, so it was incredible stroke of luck.
With their informant's help, investigators are able to piece together John and Carolyn's final 24 hours.
We find out that Keith and his brother, Brian, are drinking all night long. They're doing drugs the entire night. That morning of the murders, Keith gets in a fight with the mother because he wants more money to go buy drugs. And this is very early in the morning prior to the homicides. We believe that after the mother would not give Keith money, he probably planned on doing a home invasion.
John is in getting ready for work. He is shaving. Carolyn's on her computer at 7:03. And sometime between there and 7:45, Keith Lince is walking down the road and walks down that back alley.
He may have seen this house that looked like an easy target. Knowing the area, he walks around to the back. He then goes in the house. Keith used to have pit bulls. This guy was not scared of dogs. He lets Wrigley, the dog, into the back room and closes the door behind him. I don't think he was expecting for John and Carolyn to be home.
Especially if the dog was like in the back. Maybe he thought, oh, these people are gone. Maybe there's nobody home.
I believe that she saw Keith coming in through the back door. Keith already had his gun out. He may have been doing, obviously, meth and maybe some coke or crack. I believe that she screams. John comes out of the bathroom, encounters Keith. He was just out of his mind. I don't think that he went in there with the intent to murder anyone. I think he went in there with the intent to rob. And all of a sudden, he'd just been confronted by 2 people, and it's a fight or flight, and he decided to kill them both.
think my biggest takeaway from this case was not to prejudge what you may see at a scene. This case would suggest that maybe there was emotion here that had evolved to a certain level where people got angry and perpetrated violence. And really what it says to me is sometimes, by sheer happenstance or drug use, it can culminate in explosive violence in a way that seems personal when really it's just disorganized, frantic, unexplainable behavior.
Keith is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He's convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
The timeline was incredibly important because you had this 35, 40-minute window where this crime occurred. And putting together this timeline made it absolutely clear when we caught the guy who it was.
As the father, John Tarwacki, said, there is no closure, and I also believe there is no closure. You may get a conviction, but it's not going to bring your kid back. It's not going to change anything. Every time Christmas comes around, every time a birthday comes around, they're not going to be there.
But what sticks with me most about this case is just how senseless it was. These were 2 normal people getting ready for work, and somebody made up their mind that they wanted something and was going to do whatever they could to get it. It's senseless. It made no sense. And it still doesn't, even after all this time. I don't know how you recover from that.
Brutal way that she suffered. Why somebody would want to do this to somebody else is beyond my comprehension.
A barbaric killing.
She was wrapped in tape, and she had a sock shoved down her throat.
This is against every woman's instinct to leave your friend behind.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
He handcuffed her and threw her in the back of a van. This was not somebody in law enforcement at all. This was an abduction.
He's on parole, and he knows that we're looking at him.
He was not a truth teller. Well, is that because he's somehow involved in this homicide?
The truth will be revealed.
At least now we could say for sure, his DNA is not supposed to be there. I mean, I wasn't physically jumping up and down, but inside I was.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. New York City, where people come to chase their dreams and find success. But not far from the bright lights of Manhattan is the Belt Parkway in South Brooklyn and the notorious area of Fountain and Seaview.
Fountain Avenue is in one of the grittier areas of South Brooklyn. The Belt Parkway runs along one side of it. There's a creek that runs along the other side.
It's desolate. It's a dead end. No foot traffic, if any. Johns bring girls down to that area because no one's going to bother you there.
It's been a known mob dumping ground. There's no reason to go there unless you're going fishing or dumping a body.
On Saturday, February 25th, 2006, a 911 call comes in at 8:26 p.m.
Police, what is emergency? Oh, yes, I found a DOA. It looks like a DOA on Seaview Avenue in Fountain. That's in Brooklyn, right? Oh, yes, and I seen him wrapped up in a sheet. It was a male. Do you see? I don't see it. I didn't see it. Was it body? It looked like a body wrapped in a sheet, yes. All right, you want to leave a name and number, sir? No, I'd rather leave a name and number. I don't want to get involved.
We get this anonymous call that a guy saw what he believed was a body being dropped out of the back of a vehicle. And then he hung up.
Homicide detectives John Cornicello and Sean McTighe of Brooklyn's legendary 75th Precinct, also known as the 7-5, respond to the call.
We had found a girl. She had tape all over her face, and she was wrapped up in a blanket on Fountain Avenue on the side of the road. Initially, we thought it was a local prostitute. Could have very easily something happened, and the girl was disposed of there.
We weren't sure if it was a sex crime, but she's wrapped up in this blanket, and you want to keep it intact as much as possible before it goes to the medical examiner's office.
Brutal way that she suffered. Why somebody would want to do this to somebody else is beyond my comprehension.
Detectives immediately start to process the scene, looking for any clues that could help with the investigation.
We did our initial canvass in the area, obviously looked for evidence around the body. Underneath her was a snow brush, so it could be important evidence.
There's no wallet, there's no ID, nothing to kind of help us to zero in on who she is.
The detective's only lead at this point is the anonymous 911 call, made a couple of miles from where the body was dropped.
The call came from a payphone by a diner on Linden Boulevard. Can we identify the caller? We spoke to the people in the diner, and we didn't get any results there. And it's a public payphone. Fingerprints, it's not going to be of any value. So we didn't have anything to go on.
With their initial canvass netting little to identify who the victim is and what happened to her, detectives are faced with another challenge.
She was preserved, for lack of a better word, because it was freezing, February. So that puts a hamper on, pinpointing, at this point in the investigation, the time of death, to find out exactly where she was and how she died.
When you don't know where someone has been in the last 24 hours, and you have someone who is found in the way that she was found, it's New York City. She could have come in contact with anyone. So if you don't have a timeline, you have an unsolved murder.
With so many unanswered questions, the detectives know that the road to the killer runs through identifying their Jane Doe.
We have to start by finding out who she is. And we really had a clean slate, unfortunately, to go on.
She was found in a desolate area. There were no cameras near where she was found. There wasn't a lot of people to be interviewed. There wasn't a big area to canvass. So we're hoping that the medical examiner will find any little thing in the investigation that's going to help us identify her. Because I can't find out who killed you unless I know who you are.
The only thing detectives can be sure of at this point is that a woman's body was found at 8:26 p.m. at Fountain in Seaview. They're counting on the autopsy to reveal more about how and when she died.
Her wrists were bound from behind with plastic zip ties. Inside the blanket, she was wrapped in tape, and below the tape, she had had a sock stuffed into her mouth and shoved down her throat. So ultimately, she died of asphyxia, the inability to get air to the lungs and blood to the brain. And it became clear from the autopsy and the internal examination that she had been the victim of a brutal sex crime.
She had distinctive tan lines, like boy shorts tan lines, as opposed to a bikini. And it's February. So this person obviously was just at a beach somewhere.
Her fingernails were also cut very short, and a chunk of her hair was hacked off.
And the way the fingernails and the hair were cut, that's not normal.
Why would someone cut off a woman's hair? Makes me think that this person is very careful. They're very planful, they know what they're doing, and they don't want DNA evidence. You use binding ties because you want to incapacitate your victims. If you're somebody who wants to become aroused by having someone held captive or humiliated or tortured, you want to make sure you have enough time to do what you need to do. These behaviors would suggest to me that they may have done something like this before.
The medical examiner could say that the time of death was within 12 to 24 hours of when we found her.
Detectives must now piece together Jane Doe's last 24 hours to find her killer, starting with identifying who she is.
The Daily News put out online rather quickly the facts that the police had provided to them, that a body has been found and appears to be homicidal in such a location and such a time.
Sometimes the police and the media have a very cooperative relationship. We can help them by getting the message out that a body has been found, that a killer's on the loose. You know, asking for help from the media to get the word out about it so they might be able to identify who this person was. And that message goes out to millions of people very quickly.
The morning after Jane Doe's discovery, a young woman, Alejandra St. Guillen, comes into the 75th precinct. She's seen the news bulletin and has information. Her sister is missing.
We bring her in the interview room. I ask her, why do you feel that this person is the person you think it is? She says her sister just got back from vacation from Florida, visiting with her mom and her stepdad. And she was out with friends the night before. So that's important because of the tan lines. But we just want to make sure. And I had a Polaroid picture now from the autopsy. And I showed her the picture and she was obviously distraught. Just in total disbelief, shock, you know, hysterical crying. So without even saying a word, I knew it was her relative.
Detectives are finally able to identify the victim of this grisly homicide. She's 24-year-old Imette St. Guillen.
Imette was from the Boston area. She'd gone to a private school, Boston Latin. She was raised by her mother after her father died when she was 9 years old. Imette was following in her father's footsteps. He had studied criminal justice, and she was a criminal justice student at John Jay College. Imette was a brilliant young woman, you know, on a roll. She could have gone and done anything.
So now I have her name, I get her family members' names, I get her friends' names, and then we decide who we're gonna go to first.
The night before Imette's body was found, she was out celebrating her upcoming 25th birthday with her best friend, Claire.
Claire came into the 75th precinct. She sat down with us and went over the course of events of that night. So this particular night, they went to the Pioneer Bar in Manhattan.
In the old days, the Bowery was drunks and bums, and if you stopped your car, they would, you know, try to clean your windshield with dirty rags, and you just wanted to get away from it. But, you know, but now, in 2006, this is an up-and-coming area. So they were just going out to have a nice social night in a nice area of Manhattan.
I remember Claire telling us that it was between 3:30 maybe. Bars close at 4 in New York. Claire wants to go home, and Matt wants to still stay out. So they leave the Pioneer Bar, and they're having an argument outside of the bar. It wasn't normal for her to keep partying like this and not wanting to go home and not wanting to be with her friends.
Claire had tried to get her in a cab a couple times and was unsuccessful. And she threw up her hands and said, "You want to stay out? Stay out. I'm going home," and did.
Claire gets in a cab, she leaves. Imette now walks the opposite direction of the bar. That's 3:30. Claire now feels guilty and upset that she left her there, so Claire calls her. That's probably 3:45. Where are you? I'm gonna come get you. I'm gonna bring you home. But Imette doesn't know what bar she's at. She said, "I've got a drink. Once I finish my drink, I'm leaving."
Claire's worried about her, but You know, eventually Emmett convinces her that everything's going to be okay. I mean, this is against every woman's instinct to leave your friend behind.
And that's the last time she ever spoke to her.
Detectives have determined the last time anyone spoke to Emmett was around 3:45 a.m. She was in a bar alone and had just left her best friend, Claire. But they don't know which bar.
I need to know, where did she go when she left Claire? When Claire pulls away in that cab, did she go north, south, east, west? Did she have a fight with anybody? Did somebody give Emmett a ride home? A million questions, because we have to find out what happened to this girl.
I have kids, I have girls, and I remember going home and saying, here's the deal. Don't ever forget this. You go out with somebody, you leave with them. You don't leave your friends behind. Just a terrible life lesson to have to learn.
I've been out to bars, my girlfriends have been out to bars where, you know, someone decides to leave early, you end up being there alone, maybe you want to have one more drink, and this case really hammers home how vulnerable young women who are alone in bars after they've been drinking can be.
So a friend doesn't know where she is. A friend knows that she has a credit card, so we start getting records on her credit card usage. Where was her credit card used?
She bought 2 rum and cokes at the Falls Bar in Manhattan. That's probably 3:45. Now, she bought those 2 drinks with cash. It would have hurt our investigation tremendously.
What strikes me about this case, what really resonates, is the little breadcrumbs we leave behind in our lives. You have to ask yourself, had she not bought those 2 rum and cokes with a credit card and left some kind of trail behind, what other evidence do we have that she's even at the bar? So something as everyday, as seemingly benign as using a credit card ends up being so critical in this case.
The Falls Bar is only 2 blocks away from the Pioneer. So when you come out of the Pioneer, you make a right and a right, and you can literally walk into the front door of the Falls. So the Falls Bar is the last place we know she was.
We have a starting point. Now we can narrow down. 3:45 a.m., she's there.
Detectives are now working with a 16-hour window between 3:45 a.m., when Emmett paid for her drinks, and 8:26 p.m., when her body was found in South Brooklyn.
So we're in Manhattan. My expectation is we're gonna have video all over the place. You know, this is Manhattan, it's not Brooklyn. So we task a team with finding video. Maybe we can pick her up somewhere. Anything else that can maybe piece this together.
Security camera footage shows Emmett entering the Falls Bar at 3:40 a.m. But there is no footage of her leaving the bar when it closes at 4 a.m. or any time thereafter.
Now we know where she was alive and well at around closing time on that Saturday morning. So now you have to look at the universe of characters who were in that place who might have something to say about this.
Bars and nightclubs present particular risks. They're what we call both crime generators and crime attractors. A crime generator is any place where crime arises because of opportunity, where there's alcohol and crowds involved and some people just can't control their instincts or their impulses. Crime attractors, at the same time, draw predators because they know a certain type of victim in a certain state may be there. How many people did she come into contact with that night? In narrowing down that list of persons of interest to potential suspects, you would always start with the staff. Who are the natural surveillance of the bar? These are the people working there who keep an eye on things, and those are the bartenders and the bouncers.
Detectives believe someone at the Falls Bar could be a witness, or even Emmett's killer. The bartender remembers serving Emmett that evening.
She's the one that actually sold the 2 drinks to Emmett. She remembered Emmett being intoxicated and it being the end of the night and being obligated to close the bar, and that there was talk of her having to leave.
The bartender tells detectives at 4 a.m., bar manager Daniel Dorian wanted Emmett out the door once and for all.
The barmaid remembered Dorian wanting to get her out of the place because, and I don't know the exact words, but she had been drinking and, you know, she's crazy, we got to get her out of here.
Now it's time to go. She's like, I paid for my drinks, I'm not going anywhere. Dorian gets fed up. Maybe he doesn't want to deal with it. Maybe he's drinking. He tells the two bouncers, get her out of here.
Daniel Dorian's name is well known to police. His family owns a number of bars across the 5 boroughs.
Dorian was a piece of work. I mean, first he said he didn't remember her even being in the bar.
He said, well, I was working, counting the money for the night proceeds. So I don't know what you're talking about.
So on one hand, you have Dorian's statement, and then you have the barmaid who paints a whole different picture. So now, again, that's like, ooh, you know, why is he being evasive?
He was not a truth teller. And one has to ask oneself, well, is that because he's somehow involved in this homicide?
You know, you go back to a hunch, the story, just something was missing. And he says he didn't know anything, he didn't see anything. Something just wasn't right.
Their suspicions raised by how Daniel Dorian's story contradicts the bartender's. Detectives question Dorian about his whereabouts after the bar closed at 4 a.m.
And he says he's in an office in an isolated area. He's providing an opportunity where he's by himself, and now he's got this wide time frame of, well, I don't know when she left, I don't know when they left, and then I was there for maybe another hour.
The bar's already closed. Nobody was with this guy. So that's something we keep in the back of our mind. Maybe he had something to do with this.
Under the circumstances, it's just too many things that have to be answered, you know, that leave a question in your mind as an investigator. It raises him to, you know, to a pretty high level. Did he try to pick her up, and then did something go bad, and now is he up her?
Detectives have zeroed in on bar manager Daniel Dorian as their first suspect in the brutal murder of 24-year-old criminal justice student Imette St. Guillen.
If you're telling me you closed the place up, she was there. We know what time she was there from the receipt. But he's just saying, I don't know who this girl is. Obviously, there's something more to that.
The Falls was connected to the Dorian family, a notorious family in New York for several reasons. The patriarch, Red Dorian, was known as a bootlegger back in the 20s. The family opened a bar on the Upper East Side called Dorian's Red Hand after the patriarch. It was known as a place where prep school kids could go and get drunk and hook up with each other. That bar became notorious in the mid-'80s for the Jennifer Levin murder, the Preppy murder. It was a black eye for the family.
In this case, we see Dorian lying initially about his alibi. This is not that uncommon in that people lie in murder investigations all the time, and they think they're white lies, and in reality, they can really derail an investigation. At the same time, it's uncanny that this is the second high-profile murder linked to a series of bars and nightclubs owned by this same family. It's like lightning striking twice in the same place.
So now we start to say, well, wait a minute. His father had this bar. Patron is in there, is killed. And it creates all of this bad press on this restaurant and the father and his business. Now we're sitting here and it's a Dorian bar and we've got a female victim who was in here at some point. Is it connected to him? Or he can see where this is going and he's trying to distance himself from the circumstances.
As detectives weigh their next move with Dorian, there is an unexpected development in the case.
You get a phone call, get to headquarters right away. Don't tell anybody what you're doing or where you're going. So I'm looking at my partner, I said, wow, the guy's turned himself in.
Daniel Dorian wants to come in and give us a statement. But he wants to do it at police headquarters. He doesn't want to come to East New York. It's very different.
Detectives questioned Daniel Dorian again about the night Amet disappeared after closing time at the Falls Bar.
Now he says, all right, listen, this is what happened. She was there. So he tells us that he sees Amet. She's very drunk. She's at the end of the bar. And she's arguing with him. I'm not leaving. I paid for these drinks. So that's when he puts the two bouncers on her, Daryl and Tim. That's their job, escort people out of the bar. And that's what they did.
At 4 a.m., the main entrance to the bar is already locked. So the two bouncers, Tim Catella and Daryl Littlejohn, escort Amet out a secondary side door exit at 4:10 a.m., where there are no security cameras.
Ultimately, Dorian, when he did come around, said, listen, that girl walked out of here under her own power, aided by my two bouncers, Tim and Daryl.
Daniel Dorian remains a suspect in Amet's murder, but detectives put him on the back burner while they question the two bouncers.
Danny Dorian didn't do any research on any of the people that were doing security for his operation. He had no idea who was working for him.
The police department's investigation revealed the lack of attention and concern and care that the manager of that bar exercised in hiring his bouncers. How did you get your bouncers? Oh, this one recommended this one, and he knows a friend, and I paid him $100 off the books at the end of the night, and that was it. And as long as they showed up and did their job, I was happy.
Once we start going to their backgrounds, Daryl was on parole for sure, and Tim was on probation. You have a curfew in general, but then you definitely can't work in a bar on parole. Now we know for sure you two were the last persons to see this girl outside this establishment.
Two doormen. Neither of them had any business working at the bar, interacting with vulnerable people under the influence of alcohol. At this point, the decision is, who do you zero in on?
Detectives shift the focus of their investigation to two bouncers at the Falls Bar, Tim Catella and Daryl Littlejohn. They both escorted Amet out of the bar at 4:10 a.m.
So now we're going to circle back and ask them, what happened? How did you get home that night?
Detectives start with Tim and ask him to come to the 75th precinct to answer some questions.
Tim lived in Staten Island. Daryl lived in Queens, complete opposite directions. So Daryl would go north in Manhattan towards either the bridge or the tunnel, and Tim would go to take the ferry over to Staten Island, maybe 4:15. He said, I went to the ferry and I saw Daryl talking with Amet.
But he says he has no clue to what happened to either Littlejohn or Amet after he walked in that direction.
Detectives need more than Tim's word to corroborate his story, but they're putting him on ice until they talk to the second bouncer, Daryl Littlejohn.
Daryl Littlejohn's an ex-con. He was on parole at the time, and his employment at Dorian's bar was a violation of his parole agreement.
With Daryl Littlejohn directly in their crosshairs, detectives use his parole as leverage to haul him into the 7-5 for questioning.
So, start with a basic timeline, just like we have in the case. Tell me your daily schedule, tell me your routine. How do you get to work? How do you leave work? What are your hours? How long have you been working there? Do you remember this girl? He said he argued with her about racism and crime with black men. Daryl said he was a U.S. Marshal, which we know he wasn't. And they were just arguing about crime, how the statistics for black men are off than they should be. It was just a basic argument at a bar. He says he walked her out the door and she was on her way. He doesn't know how she got home. If she got in a cab or a subway, nothing.
Littlejohn denies having anything to do with Amet's murder, but detectives press him for details about what he was doing between 4:15 a.m., when Tim walked away from him and Amet, and 8:26 p.m., when her body was found in South Brooklyn.
He's on parole, and he's also very cautious, and he knows that we're looking at him.
I mean, we talked to him for 2 days, over 8 hours and 8 hours. He never said, I don't want to talk to you. He'd say, I borrowed my ex-girlfriend's car, and I was with her. I went to see my mom in the nursing home. He went to the nursing home. He didn't go visit his mom. I asked him, I said, maybe he went home with Annette, maybe they had sex, and she had a heart attack and died. Is that possible? But he was a career criminal. He wasn't talking.
Detectives are being stonewalled by Daryl Littlejohn, but they've obtained warrants for a sample of his DNA and to search his house and vehicle.
This was front page news. And so when the police department executed a search warrant on Daryl Littlejohn's home in Queens, the camera crews from the local TV stations were on scene, and they led their news story with a live shot from in front of the home.
We find empty bottles of bleach in the garbage. If he cleaned up the house with bleach, he was going to destroy DNA evidence. So the crime scene investigators took apart the drain and the sink, looking for hair fibers or blood. It was spotless. It was devastating.
Adding to detectives' frustration is the pressure from the ongoing media coverage and the public's desire to see Annette St. Ian's killer brought to justice.
She was a sable-eyed beauty is the way the Post used to describe her. She was a grad student. She had a very strong will, and she went her own way. It was a reminder that things can happen and the city's a dangerous place.
You go out with friends, you're in a bar, you're having drinks, you're having a good time, you're having a celebration. Your friends go home, you decide not to go home with them, and then you're never seen again. It's shocking, and it hits home, because so many people will sit there and say, I've done that. And that's what really, I think, took over everybody's attention.
When a case has sort of captivated the attention of a city, especially a large city like New York City, there can be an immense amount of pressure for investigators to solve the case quickly, especially if there is a concern within the community that there could be a killer in their midst and that they might be next. By getting the message out, the public might be able to report suspicious activity that they saw when they were leaving a bar late at night. Basically, they can be the eyes and ears for investigators when they weren't there.
The persistent media coverage eventually unearths a significant lead for detectives.
A young woman who was a college student at York College was watching a newscast, and she had been a victim of an unsolved crime just a short time earlier, back in November of 2005, and she saw in the background with the Klieg lights of the camera, she saw Daryl Littlejohn's van, and she said, that's the van that I was abducted in. She had been on her way home from college classes when she was abducted by a man who seemed to be some sort of law enforcement and was suggesting that he was going to arrest her, and he handcuffed her and threw her in the back of a van, but it gradually occurred to her that this was not somebody in law enforcement at all, and this was an abduction. And so when the van slowed down and rolled around a corner, she opened the door and jumped out. And she escaped and survived. So what happens is the police take Littlejohn and put him in a lineup, but she can't make an identification of him. But the significance of this young woman's abduction was that there was a pattern to Daryl Littlejohn's conduct that was so similar to Emmett's case. He engaged young, attractive women and pretended to be in law enforcement and then abducted them, and they met foul play. Everyone was a suspect until Daryl Littlejohn emerged as a real suspect.
With a pattern of behavior and the means, Detectives are certain that Daryl Littlejohn is the only person who had the opportunity to kill Emmett.
I think, unfortunately, with people who are sexually sadistic, there may be people who require more aggression, more pain, or more suffering to be inflicted for them to achieve the same level or a higher level of sexual arousal, almost like a high. We would call these people increasers. So for him, there's an increased likelihood that he has fantasies that are compulsively driving him to do this, and that because he's aroused by power, control, and domination and hurt, increases the likelihood that homicide would be the result of any of the sexual attacks that he may perpetrate.
With the clock ticking, detectives interview a new witness, a security guard who works nights in the area where Emmett's body was dropped.
He remembers walking along Fountain Avenue and seeing a minivan, and a guy is inside the van on the phone because the phone's lit up. He didn't give us a plate. He didn't say for sure that was Daryl, but it's the same type of minivan that Daryl owns.
The fellow that worked at the landfill as a night watchman, his shift was supposed to be from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 12-hour shifts, but he wasn't always on time. The police department got his Metro card, and they were able to trace exactly when he boarded the first train or bus in the Bronx and took the train to Brooklyn and then got on a bus in Brooklyn to go to his job.
So he's supposed to be at work at 7. It's late. Now it's 7:30 as he's walking down this route on Fountain Avenue. Timing is unbelievable. He was at the right place at the right time.
The evidence was overwhelming that this was Daryl's van, and of course the description, limited though it was spot on. I felt very confident Daryl Littlejohn was not just the person who dumped the body, but he was also the killer.
Detectives are closing in on Emmett St. Guillen's killer, Daryl Littlejohn, but their evidence in the case is entirely circumstantial.
Particularly if you wind up with a circumstantial case with no confession, with no eyewitnesses, the timeline becomes all that more important because your circumstantial evidence that you collect and gather either fits or it doesn't fit. And a lot of that has to do with the timing of certain things that happened leading up to the murder and then in the investigation after the murder.
Detectives do have an eyewitness account of a van matching Daryl Littlejohn's in the precise area where Emmett's body was dumped. And one detail stands out. The driver was using their cell phone.
Within a very short time, we had gotten a warrant for Daryl Littlejohn's phone records and cell tower records indicating the location of the towers that handled calls that he received at a certain time. And it turned out to be highly significant because eventually we were able to determine that there was a woman who was calling Littlejohn, and when she got disconnected, either intentionally or otherwise by Littlejohn, she called him back. And so there were these 2 phone calls that were made at crucial times, hitting off specific towers in Queens and in Brooklyn. It put him driving from Queens to the general location where the body was found and back again, right at around the time that the night watchman puts this vehicle there.
Detectives have now placed bouncer Daryl Littlejohn exactly where Emmett's body was dumped, less than an hour before police were called to the scene at 8:26 p.m.
The phone records, to me, are extremely important because they nail down the time. They put him doing something, not just in general, but at a relevant time.
But without physical evidence or a confession, they can't link Littlejohn directly to the murder.
We see in Emmett's case that they get really to sort of the 7th inning stretch in this case. They have nearly all the circumstantial evidence they need, but there's just that one missing ingredient to allow them to make the final push to the knife. And a lot of investigators may have rolled the dice and gone to trial with what they already had, but we see them hold out and stay focused, looking for that final piece to close the circle. And that often can mean the difference between making an arrest and someone being acquitted at trial and making an arrest and making sure that person never gets out.
But then, detectives get the break they've been hoping for.
Ken's calling me. The only thing he can say is, we got DNA. What? We got... It was an interesting case. Ken calls up and he says, we got DNA.
Forensics have come back on the snow brush found near Emmet's body. Daryl Littlejohn's DNA is a match.
They could have easily had left it behind, and had they done so, we would have been without a piece of evidence. But I'm grateful that it was whatever number of feet away from the body, and a detective chose to pick it up. I don't know, something about it made him say, I'm going to take this, and that turned out to be very fortunate.
Littlejohn's DNA also matches a speck of blood found on one of the zip ties used to bind her hands and feet.
So at least now we could say for sure, this is him. His DNA is not supposed to be there. I mean, I wasn't physically jumping up and down, but inside I was.
It solidifies all of this circumstantial evidence to the fact that his DNA is there. How could his DNA be there if he wasn't responsible for the killing? We were so involved in this case, and it was just, you know, when we finally got the piece of evidence, it was just, it was overwhelming.
Detectives can now piece together Emmet St. Guillen's final 24 hours.
So we know that Claire and Emmet leave the Pioneer Bar around 3:20. They're there out front talking and arguing about going home till about 3:30. Claire gets in the cab, she goes home. Emmet goes to the Falls Bar. She orders her 2 drinks at the Falls Bar, probably around 3:45.
She got into a conversation with Daryl Littlejohn in which she was talking about the criminal justice system and the incarceration rate of black people. I believe he was offended by what she said and decided that this is the woman he was going to prey on.
I think either he offered her a ride or he followed her walking and then forcibly put her in the car.
She ends up in Queens in his residence.
From that point on is when, obviously, something happened between Daryl and Emmet.
She was beaten up and raped pretty badly.
There was evidence that she struggled with him and he strangled her.
Detectives now estimate that Emmet was murdered between 5:15 and 7:15 a.m., based on the final autopsy results.
Now he's got to get rid of the body. So why did he choose that place? Maybe he had driven past it dozens of times and said, well, that'd be a good place to dump a body. I don't know.
As Daryl Littlejohn drags Emmet's body out of the van, his snow brush falls out onto the ground.
One thing that I'm grateful that crime scene had the foresight to pick up was a little cheap brush, because ultimately it turned out to be important.
But one question remains unanswered. What was Daryl Littlejohn's motive?
This was, in fact, the work of a random stranger and a random attack. And there's absolutely no question in my mind that this could have been the beginning of Littlejohn's career as a serial killer. And that were it not for Emmet's use of the credit card and some good investigative work, we'd be talking about far more victims.
Daryl Littlejohn is convicted for the murder of Emmet St. Guillen on June 3rd, 2009. He is sentenced to life without parole.
Timeline was critical on this case. That's how you develop your story. You got a start and you got an end, and you got to try to piece it in the middle, and that's how you build your case and bring the person to justice who's responsible for that. There's nothing more satisfying than doing something like that.
You had DNA evidence, you had hair and fiber, you had phone work, you had interviews, you had canvases, you had video downloads. Every tool as an investigator we utilized. It's never gonna bring back their relative or their loved one, but you do the best you can for them to give them closure.
I've talked to Emmet's mom, and whatever success we had in the courtroom doesn't change things for her. She doesn't have her Met back. She doesn't get to see her have children or get married or have a successful career. But years later, they created a scholarship in her honor at John Jay. I would like to think that those who enter the field associated with criminal justice can look at Emmett and say, this is someone who could have been me. That's why I need to do my job well and take it seriously, because the stakes are that high.